Welcome back to the Game Collection. After years of hearing about the Legend of Heroes Trails series, I finally decided to give it a go. And what I found was the last thing that I expected, a worthy successor to the Grandia series. So let's talk about this. I am SuperDerek, and this is Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky FC. Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky FC, or First Chapter, is the first entry in the Trails in the Sky series, which is the first set of games in the larger, overarching Trails or Kiseki series. The series is in itself a subset of games in the Legend of Heroes series, a series that dates back to the 1980s when Nihon Falcom released Dragon Slayer on the PC 8801. I mean, we're talking about the really old magic here, but despite the overarching series of deep roots, Trails in the Sky is a perfect starting point for anyone looking to get into the series. And with the waves that the series is making in the more recent Trails of Cold Steel series, I'm betting there are plenty of people who are looking for this exact entry point. Trails in the Sky FC was originally released on PC in 2004 in Japan. The game was later ported by Falcom over to the PlayStation Portable in 2006. However, in the West, we wouldn't see the game until its Western debut in late 2011. The game sold poorly overall, so copies can be hard to find, but in summer of 2014, Xseed published a PC release to the West where the series slowly and gradually started gaining a cult following. Huge emphasis on the cult part, by the way. And after my playthrough, I may have just become their newest convert. So, enough with this history lesson and the hype. What exactly is this thing all about anyway? I'm far from a lore expert in the series, but in the world of Trails in the Sky, there is this thing called the Bracer Guild, a loose collection of highly talented do-gooders. They're sort of like a highly respected and honorable group of freelance investigators and law enforcement, or militia, but labeling them as such doesn't really convey the tone of the organization quite right. They operate independent of the military and span across national borders. Closest similarity I can think of are probably hunters from Hunter x Hunter, an anime that I can't recommend highly enough. And Trails in the Sky, on its face, is a game about 16-year-olds Joshua and Estelle and their journey to become full-fledged members of the Bracer Guild. In this game, you'll find the duo backpacking all across the Liberal Kingdom, performing odd jobs and providing services to curry favor with the local guild branches, making friends along the way. It feels very much like you're playing a shonen anime in turn-based RPG form. But that's just the surface-level view, because under the surface is a subtler storyline that gradually shows as the story progresses. Assassinations, intrigue, conspiracy, double-crosses. Trails in the Sky has a more serious side that contrasts vividly against the otherwise lighthearted romp you could easily be fooled into thinking this game is. In that way, this game sort of has a bit of a dualistic nature to it, a two-sided coin. A fun, light-hearted, upbeat side and a darker, subterfuge-fueled mystery side. And as I write this review, the more I think this could be an overarching motif for the game as a whole. A barrier for entry here, though, is that Trails in the Sky FC is definitely a slow burn. Like many a great anime where you have to force yourself to get through the first few episodes, or in some cases the first few seasons, before it gets really good, so too is it with Trails in the Sky in that you might not really start to feel hooked on the story until the end of Chapter 1, which might take a good 20 hours or so. Which is not to say that the first 20 hours is unpleasant by any stretch. You might just find yourself wondering where any of this is actually going. Well, rest assured, though, it does go somewhere great in fact, but it takes a while. The other barrier for entry, though, I feel obligated to mention is that semi-awkward relationship tension between our two protagonists, Joshua and Estelle. I mean, I get it. Joshua was adopted into the family when they were both kids and they were like 11, so they're not related by blood, etc., but I know that there are people who will balk at the testing of Western cultural norms, and if you think that situation is a little too close to being icky, you may want to pass this one up. However, if you can get past that, Trails in the Sky does weave a cute and sweet love story into this coming-of-age tale. But that's enough focus on Joshua and Estelle for now, because Trails in the Sky has a large cast of memorable and colorful characters who steal the show whenever they're on screen. Aside from our duo, there isn't really what I would call a main party within Trails in the Sky. Instead, each chapter you are introduced to new characters who happen to drop in and out of the story as it progresses. Each person sticks around for as long as their story is relevant or until duty pulls them in different directions. This system also reminded me of my time with Grandia, and while I have a great affinity for games that give you full access to your whole crew at all times, I think it worked really well in Trails in the Sky and suited the narrative of the story well. It's hard to pick a favorite character from the available lineup, but it's easy to say that a major standout was Olivier, a gunslinging man of mystery who also happens to be a well-written bard archetype character. Continuing the motif I mentioned earlier, Olivier is a character who has two sides to him, a carefree and lighthearted charismatic side, but from time to time the game hints that there may be more to this man than he would have you know. In fact, I would say that there are very few characters throughout the game who don't exhibit this dualistic nature, the facade they put on versus their true selves. It's subtle, but the game doesn't beat you over the head with it, but it is there, and it's pretty darn brilliant. Another character that I immediately found myself gravitating toward was the reporter Niall, who never really became a party member, but rather a collaborator that you bump into throughout the game. Immediately I pegged him as the sort of character that ought to be voiced by Steve Bloom. But I was absolutely delighted by what I found when I installed the Evo mod. In the Evo version of the game on Vita, which we never got in the West, Niall was voiced in Japanese by the late and great seiyuu Keiji Fujiwara.
どういうことだそりゃ。
だから、私たちが代理のブレイサーなんだけど。あ、これ紹介状ね。
おいおい、冗談きついぜ。お前らみたいなガキどもがブレイサーだっていうのかよ。
The PC version of Trails in the Sky features very little voice acting, all of it that I recall occurred as banter during battle in fact. However, some industrious modders found a way to take all of that voice acting from the PS Vita release and plug it into the PC version seamlessly. The mod is not required to enjoy the game, but the enhancement definitely elevated my overall experience, and is something I would recommend you look into should you decide to take up this version of the game. Trails in the Sky is a turn-based RPG with a semi-tactical battle system complete with considerations for range of movement and areas of damage for special moves. In that regard, the game is kind of like Lunar Silver Star's story. However, there is also a massive emphasis on turn order and the manipulation of that order to best suit your party, again much like Grandia. On the left is a bar indicating upcoming turns, and some of those turn slots are assigned modifiers such as critical hits, extra rewards, that sort of thing, and the moves you select will modify whose turn occupies those slots, so you will find yourself sometimes making compromises with how you want to attack in order to prevent an enemy from attacking you with a critical hit turn. There are also special moves that can supersede turn order, which are kind of like limit breaks. You can pull them off at any time, stealing critical hit slots right out from under an enemy's turn. But these do take a while to build up, and the craft points they consume are a resource that can be used for other devastating blows. It makes the decision to use them a tactical one that may leave your party member low on resources for the next few turns. In continuing the dualistic nature of the theme of the game, about half of the game is spent going through dungeons and battling monsters and that sort of thing. The other half, though, involves talking to townsfolk, performing some tasks, bracer quests, and reading storyline dialogue, and there is a lot of dialogue in the game. NPCs constantly have something new to say and relay evolving stories of their lives to you as you progress through the game. The Evo mod that I installed added massive amounts of voice acting for all the non-optional dialogue, but there are still pages and pages and pages of optional dialogue. I've been told by fans of the series that the NPC dialogue adds a heck of a lot to the world-building aspect of the game, but personally speaking, I found myself far more motivated to focus on moving the story of the game along. The world presented in Trails in the Sky is a pretty interesting one. In Trails in the Sky, the Liberal Kingdom is explored on foot for the most part as an interconnected series of maps. There's no overworld map to speak of, and the world is pretty darned expansive. I'd hesitate to say that there's a ton of variety between the various regions though, because they are mostly comprised of similar biomes, and the towns mostly feature the same styles of architecture with a few notable exceptions near the borders of the other nations. Some areas of the game, though, break things up by having you explore like alongside oceanside beaches, for example, but for the most part, looking back, it felt like most of the game took place in wide open plains and wooded areas. Visually, Trails in the Sky is once again where I can't help but find myself drawing parallels to Grandia. The game features 2D sprites on a 3D plane, and you're given full control over the camera. The much higher resolution offered by the PC version of the game definitely makes the game feel more like an evolution of the Grandia style. And on that note, I think that the visuals are very pleasing. The character portraits fit the game perfectly and are extremely expressive. There are a few points in the game where the designers stretched their legs to really show off some stunning visuals, but most of those moments are pretty few and far between, so what you're looking at right now is pretty much what you're going to get. And in the music department, Trails in the Sky is one of those games that will stick with you for a long time. It is a Nihon Falcom game we're talking about here, and if you only know one thing about Falcom, it's that they make outstanding music. Some tracks here and there sound like every early 2000s anime I've ever watched, slightly generic but overall pleasant. Other songs though take center stage and can carry vast amounts of emotional weight behind them. The battle system heard throughout the game is completely inoffensive, though some people might not take to the somewhat light jazzy feel. Not me though, I enjoyed it quite a bit. One final point that I'd like to make about the dualistic motif I've mentioned a couple of times now is that Trails in the Sky first chapter is similarly only one side of a coin. Trails in the Sky first chapter is, after all, as the title states, only the first chapter, and it ends on a massive cliffhanger that demands that the player sees the other side of this coin. And I have my suspicions that the follow-up may be the hidden darker side to this otherwise happy-go-lucky, light-hearted bright side. I can't wait to play the second chapter, but unfortunately I do have to wait at least a little while, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on that review when it comes out. But in the meantime, I can easily say that Trails in the Sky is a fantastic game and a worthy successor to the Grandia series, intentional or otherwise. And for that reason, the game has easily earned itself a spot in the game collection.